Hey everybody, today we're back in my office and we're going to be talking today in one of our last encounters with Jesus about Jesus and his disciples in John chapter 15. This is verses 1 through 5, and let me read that to you real quickly. Jesus is talking to his disciples and he says to them, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that does not bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. Already you are clean because of the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And these are really important words that Jesus was speaking to his disciples. And this is closer to the end of his life as well. And he's talking about, here he is using a metaphor again, and how the vine and the branches are so important to the plant in itself. And he tells himself that he tells his disciples that he is the vine. The Father is the vine dresser. That means he's the gardener. He's the one that keeps everything going. He's the one that sustains it. He gives it water. He prunes it when it's necessary. And he says every branch that doesn't bear fruit he takes away, but then every branch that does bear fruit he prunes. And so I wanted to, as we were talking about this today, think a little bit about plants. And I've brought this plant in from outside because I'm going to do a little pruning on it to show you how that works. But he's really talking more about grapes. And the thing about grapes is that they grow on vines and they have these long branches that grow. And on those branches is where the clusters go. Now, if there's a long branch that doesn't have any grapes on it, then what he's going to do is cut that off, because then from there, more branches will grow. So he just takes that completely out, because if it's not bearing fruit for him, or if it's not giving any fruit, then it's not worth it to him to even keep it. And so he just cuts that right out. But the ones that do bear fruit, what they do is they give their fruit, and then then that particular branch is probably not going to produce anymore, and so they need to cut that back, and so that new branches can grow or new fruit can grow. And that's why I brought this plant in, because I have this little primrose that I bought a couple of weeks ago, and it sat out in the rain, got really waterlogged. But today what I want to do is take off all of the old flowers, because when I'm done, you're going to see that there are some new blooms coming in. And this plant is one of those that I picked up, and it was really sad looking at the store when I bought it. But I brought it home, and the pot that it was in was really, really crowded. So what I did was I separated it out and put it into two different pots. So in this pot, I have the white primrose and an orangish one, and then the other one outside has some different colored flowers in it. But what I'm doing here is I'm trimming away all the old dead blooms, and I'll show you why in just a minute. But first I want to get all the old dead blooms off. So as we're working here, we can see that it thins it out a little bit. And what that actually does is give room for new flowers to grow in too, because flowers need room just like plants need room. And one of the things that a vine dresser even does with the grapes is that he will, even on a cluster of grapes, if there are so many grapes there that are growing, he'll even take some of those grapes out to give room for the other grapes to grow in, and grow in nice and full, because otherwise none of the grapes will be any good if he just lets all of them grow on there. So just about done here. And I'm going to show you. Now, one of these things that happens here is this is kind of painful for the plant. Of course, we don't think of plants as feeling pain and, having feelings or anything like that. But it is a little bit of trauma for the plant to go through. And just like when, for example, you fall down and you cut your knee, or you hurt your arm, you scrape it or something, and that hurts, even though you know that will be okay in a couple of days, it's still a little bit painful there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip this, because then I'm going to show you all of the new, see these new flowers that are growing in here? Those are all brand new flowers that are coming up. But I had to get rid of all these old ones. There's even one there and a few over here. But I had to get rid of all those old ones in order for it to have room to grow. And probably I'll even cut out a few of these leaves, because we don't need quite so many of those either. And they like to have a little bit of room, and they like the sunshine. So this is what Jesus is talking about when he's talking about if it's bearing fruit, it's going to get pruned. And that's really a good comparison to our Christian life, because you think about our relationship with Jesus and how we're supposed to be. And it's not enough to just ask Jesus to be our Savior. He wants us to be working for him. And it's very important that we be doing that for him. And so he wants us to be doing that. Now, we have to remember that if we are not working for him, then he's going to treat us a little bit like that vine that's not producing any fruit at all. And he may just say, okay, I'm just going to set that person aside because they're really not interested in doing any work for me. So I am going to just set them aside. They're not any use to me. Or it's what he says to be cut off. Now, it's also a good reference to people who don't know Jesus, and they will be cut off as well. But then the ones that bear fruit are the ones, they get pruned back. And so those things, those dead blooms have to be cut off, and it's painful. This is like those things that we do, and sometimes we lose people that we love. Sometimes people that we love hurt us, and these are things, this is all part of that pruning process. But he does that because what happens, just like this flower, a whole bunch more flowers are going to come in, and that makes it worth it. Now, he's talking to the disciples, and he says, you're clean because of the word I have spoken to you. And that means that because you have accepted me as Savior, then you're already clean. I have declared you to be justified, which means God looks at you like as if you haven't sinned at all before. And so he says you need to abide in me. And that is what the point of our lesson today is staying connected to Jesus. He says, abide in me and I in you. And the branch cannot bear fruit by itself. See, this plant, if I just let it go and didn't prune all those old brown flowers off, it would just become a mess and probably die. But because I took the time to cut off all the old blooms that aren't doing anything, then now it's got room. And so it can't do that by itself. And this is the same way. You can talk to people about Jesus, but the fact is Jesus is the one that brings them to himself. He is the one that helps you to talk to them, and he is the one that sustains you. So if the branch is not connected to the vine, and I can't just pull these blooms out and expect them to keep blooming. If it's not connected to the vine, it's not going to grow. And so you have to always be connected to Jesus. And how do we do that? We do that by going to church. We do that by reading our Bible. We do that by praying. We do that by studying. We do that by watching these videos and doing the activities. And he just gives us a reminder that he is the vine. We're the branches. If we're not doing the work, he's going to cut us off, and he'll grow new branches, new people that will do his work. But we have to remember that he is the one that sustains us. In other words, anything that we do for Jesus is him doing it through us. So whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. And we just have to remember that being connected to Jesus is what is so, so important. So I've made kind of a couple of points in your handout, and there are a couple of pictures that you can look at. And I used a papaya tree. We had a lot of these in Brazil, and I used to plant the seeds in the backyard because they were easy to grow. And one time I planted some seeds, and the papaya tree started to grow, but all it did was make flowers. It never gave any fruit. And I thought, well, this is really strange. It's not giving me any fruit. I don't understand that. So I talked to somebody that knows about papaya trees, and there's actually a male papaya and a female papaya. The male papaya does not give fruit, but they pollinate the female papayas. So if you have an orchard of papaya trees, you need a few males. But if you don't, then having a male papaya tree is not worth it. It wasn't worth it to me to have a male papaya tree in my backyard because it wasn't ever going to give me any fruit. So what did I do? I cut it down and I dug it out and threw it away. But the next one I planted actually did give some fruit. So I knew that was a female papaya, and she gave some fruit, and we actually ate the fruit off of the tree, and it was really, really good fruit, and I enjoyed it very, very much. So these are good lessons for us to remember that Jesus is with us, but Jesus is also going to teach us, and he's going to discipline us, and he is going to do what it takes to make us remember that we need to always stay connected to him. So in your question today, it's actually just one question, and it's not really a question. What I'm going to ask you to do today is to explain how this Bible passage teaches us the importance of being connected to Jesus. And so you can write whatever you feel is the best answer. Like I said many times, there is no one right answer to these things. Sometimes there are more than one right answer. There's also a coloring page for you to do and a word search for you to do. And next week, actually, somebody else is going to be teaching the lesson, and that's exciting. So you'll get to see somebody else for a change on this. So I'll be including your handout in the link for you to be able to do. And I hope you all have a good week. And I know we were hoping that we would be at church this week, but this time it just didn't work. So maybe next week, or maybe it's still going to be a few more weeks. But you all have a great week, and I hope that you're all staying healthy, and may the Lord bless you all.